It was the beginning of the fall semester when Emily and her friends first heard the rumors about Hollow Ridge Academy. Nestled on the outskirts of town, the old boarding school had a reputation that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest students. Whispers of dark hallways, ghostly apparitions, and unsettling noises had circulated for years. The school, with its Gothic architecture and towering spires, seemed to loom over the town like a sinister shadow. Emily was skeptical at first. She had always considered herself a rational person, not one to believe in ghost stories. However, as she stepped through the creaking iron gates of Hollow Ridge, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in her chest. The air was heavy with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant cawing of crows. The first week went by without incident. Classes were mundane, and Emily was beginning to think that the rumors were nothing more than exaggerated tales to scare the newcomers. But that changed on the night of the full moon. It started with the bell. At midnight, the ancient bell tower, which hadn't rung in decades, suddenly came to life. The sound was deep and resonant, echoing through the dark corridors and waking everyone in the dormitories. Emily and her friends, Jake and Lisa, decided to investigate. Armed with only their phones for light, they ventured into the main building. The hallways were deserted, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows that danced on the walls. As they approached the bell tower, the air grew colder, and an inexplicable sense of dread settled over them. The door to the bell tower was ajar, swaying slightly as if beckoning them in. They exchanged nervous glances, but pushed forward. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight as they ascended, each step feeling heavier than the last. When they reached the top, they found the bell swaying gently, though there was no wind. "Who's there?" Jake called out, his voice trembling. Silence. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them, and the bell rang out once more, deafening in the confined space. They screamed, but their voices were drowned out by the cacophony. When the ringing finally subsided, they found themselves in complete darkness. Emily fumbled for her phone, but it wouldn't turn on. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. The air grew colder still, and a faint whispering filled the room. It was a language none of them recognized, ancient and malevolent. Then they saw it, a figure barely visible in the dim light. It was a woman, her face obscured by a veil. She glided towards them, her movements unnaturally smooth. As she drew closer, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Leave this place," she hissed, "or suffer the same fate." Terrified, they stumbled down the stairs, tripping over each other in their haste. When they burst out into the hallway, the door slammed shut behind them, the sound echoing through the empty halls. They didn't stop running until they were back in their dorm room, locking the door behind them. The next day, they tried to tell their classmates about what had happened, but no one believed them. The bell tower was sealed shut, and the faculty insisted it had been that way for years. They dismissed the incident as a collective nightmare, a product of stress and overactive imaginations. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they had disturbed something ancient and evil. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed without warning, and the whispering, always the whispering, followed them wherever they went. Desperate for answers, Emily decided to do some research. She spent hours in the library poring over old records and newspaper articles. What she found chilled her to the bone. Hollow Ridge Academy had a dark history. Decades ago, a young woman named Margaret had been a student there. She was accused of practicing witchcraft and was subjected to a brutal exorcism in the bell tower. The ritual went horribly wrong, and Margaret died under mysterious circumstances. Her spirit, it was said, never left the school. Emily shared her findings with Jake and Lisa, who were equally horrified. They realized that the only way to end the hauntings was to confront Margaret's spirit and set her free. Armed with a plan, they waited for the next full moon. The night was dark and foreboding as they made their way back to the bell tower. This time they brought candles, salt, and an old Latin prayer they had found in one of the books. The door creaked open, as if expecting them. They formed a circle, lighting the candles and sprinkling salt around them. As they began to chant the prayer, the temperature plummeted, and the whispers returned, louder and more urgent. The figure of Margaret appeared once more, her veil lifted to reveal hollow, sorrowful eyes. "Please," Emily begged, "we want to help you. Tell us how." Margaret's gaze softened, and she pointed to a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside, they found an old diary, its pages filled with Margaret's tormented thoughts. The final entry was a plea for forgiveness and peace. With trembling hands, Emily read the entry aloud, tears streaming down her face. The room was filled with a blinding light, and Margaret's spirit began to fade, a look of gratitude on her face. The next morning, the school was quiet. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and for the first time in years, Hollow Ridge Academy felt like a normal school. The bell tower remained silent, and the whispers were gone. Emily, Jake, and Lisa never spoke of that night again, but they knew they had done something important. They had freed a tormented soul and broken the curse that had plagued the school for so long. But sometimes, late at night, Emily would wake to the faint sound of a bell ringing in the distance, and she would wonder if Margaret was truly at peace, or if the horrors of Hollow Ridge Academy were not yet over.